The virus. The center of discussion for the last 15 months. The world unraveled as the new version of SARS spread, killing thousands and scarring the masses. Amidst the survivors, a small but notable percent of them began experiencing odd symptoms indefinitely after their recovery. Extreme fatigue, cloudy thoughts, and memory problems. Their individual symptoms vary slightly from person to person, but they all share one colloquial name: brain fog. Included among these people are my mother and I. I genuinely think this topic hasn't received the attention it deserves, and it's gotten to that point where I want to address it directly. Explain to people what has made the last 7 months the most difficult months of my life, and I'm not hyperbolic by saying that. Hello friends from the web, my name is Scar, and this is the story of my 7th month struggle. Stay tuned. So, for those unfamiliar, what exactly is long COVID? Well, it's also been called long hauler COVID and post-acute COVID-19 syndrome, and most recently, post-acute sequelae of SARS-CoV-2. I'm just going to be calling it long COVID for the sake of brevity. Long COVID is a condition that occurs after recovering from COVID-19 and encapsulates a bunch of different symptoms that remain for an indefinite amount of time. These include serious fatigue, anxiety, headache, sleep issues, and pretty much everything else that normal COVID can cause. The point is that they don't go away and can last for a very long time after. The most puzzling of which, and from my own experience seems to be the crux of the discussion, is the vague idea of brain fog. Brain fog is the epitome of confusion. It really is what it sounds like, but it's hard to describe to somebody who hasn't experienced it. So I'm really going to try and do my best here. Keep in mind a lot of this video is based on my own experience, and this can vary person to person from what I hear. I might as well say now that this video is mostly focused on sharing my own experience and telling my anecdotal tale of the hell it's caused me. Brain fog refers to the cloudy sensations inside your brain, where your cognitive functions literally deteriorate. In my case, it is almost reminiscent of what it feels like to be awake for more than 48 hours. That sense of confusion that comes with every moment of every day, while feeling like you're running at a fraction of your normal capacity. You feel dizzy, forgetful, disassociated from yourself and reality, and just overall distant from both what's going on around you and reality itself. You trade focus for the ability to do everyday tasks. It feels very often like my brain is tired but my body isn't, giving this weird sense of disconnection where they feel like two separate entities. At the end of the day, the best thing I can probably do is try to demonstrate how confusing it all is. Take the confusion you might feel trying to grasp the concept and apply that confusion to everything else in your life, even just being awake. That's how it truly feels to have brain fog. The worst part about long COVID is that the world knows next to nothing about it. Causes, commonalities, and treatments have no definite answers to speak of. The scariest part of this for me and presumably other people is just how many unknown factors are at play. I am no expert on this by any means. What I do know is that brain fog is not a new thing and has been described as a symptom in the past. The thing that makes this clouding of the conscious different is that it's unknown what specifically triggers it. Brain fog is a symptom, not necessarily a condition. There is a missing link between COVID-19 and brain fog, and while progress is being made, there is still nothing concrete. COVID-19 is a neuroinvasive virus, meaning it can enter the tissue of your brain. A study performed by doctors at the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York showed that there was an increase in cytokines in the fluid surrounding the brain in the time after recovering from COVID-19. These cytokines are a chemical produced by the immune system that can cause inflammation, in this case potentially affecting the brain. Brain inflammation obviously can lead to impaired cognitive function, and this definitely is one possible cause of brain fog, as a lot of people are saying. At least I hope. I won't beat around the bush. I'm following this chain of news closely, but it still feels like something tangible is a ways off. The key point of this section is that the cause of brain fog is brand new to the world, and it will take time to understand. Long-term studies are underway, but those of us who are fighting the worst of it can only hope something comes sooner rather than later. Brain fog might be the most baffling thing I've ever experienced. It's so hard to describe without going into detail about what exactly it affects. The most immediate and obvious symptom is debilitating exhaustion. In my case, it's not like it's a problem if I'm sitting down. Working on videos or checking people in for their appointments at work isn't really an issue. But standing on my feet for 8 hours, moving crates, or heaven forbid, working out feels almost impossible sometimes. There is almost never a waking moment when I'm not yawning. By far, one of the most difficult symptoms, though, is the appalling memory issues. There isn't really much to say here. Recalling events from my past just draws a lot of blanks. As for making new memories, always feeling hazy with this fog between you and the world disconnects you already. I've become so much more forgetful and have probably said the words "I don't know" more in the last 6 months than the previous 6 years combined. My brain overall feels very throttled and limited in its speed. It's not like I feel dumb or anything. I'm still capable of all my mental processes, I just can't do nearly as much all at once. Very often it feels like my thoughts are outpacing my brain's current capability, which results in me losing my train of thought. Once I recover from this, hoping I do, I have no idea how I'll look back on this time period in my life. Maybe it'll be like my own dark ages where records are just scarce. It definitely feels like the most subtle effect of my life, but it comes up all the time nonetheless. Living with brain fog has proven to be a challenge. Whereas the last section talked about the effects of the symptoms, this is about how they directly impact my everyday life. Brain fog is something that I used to only experience later in the day when I went to bed. The morning and the afternoon hours were completely normal. Then the fog started setting in when I was unwinding from my day in the evening. It slowly began to arrive earlier and earlier, though, and I began having to structure my days to optimize my non-foggy time. This was the first time it really began to affect things because I was working for a job and school. I began sleeping up until whenever I needed to be awake. Some days of the week this was around noon. Other days for work it was mid-afternoon. My sleep schedule was at the mercy of everything else, including how consistent it was. If I had an evening shift from the morning one, I knew I was going to be in hell. I knew it was going to be hell trying to get back to sleep between them. Over time, the fog rolled in earlier and earlier until I'm not sure how many months ago it started appearing the moment I woke up. It still gets worse progressively throughout the day, and as such, I've stuck to the same dynamic schedule as my life demands it. Overall, I felt like I've needed more sleep as well. 7 to 8 hours doesn't cut it anymore. Now I feel like I need 9 to 10. The mental handicaps have also had direct roles on just living my life in general. Basic functions that I rely on for school, work, adulting, and YouTube are hindered. You have to cut out things and have to be very deliberate about what you do in a single day. Basically, everything takes longer to do, and I can do less in a day overall. This also extends to emotions and stress and my capabilities to deal with them. Right now, the stress of having to move is an example. An approaching deadline and the need to find a house in the middle of the season where most people aren't listing houses and apartments is really difficult. And there was my friend who took their own life just over a month ago, someone I was really close with and I have needed to cope with. Not only has that been a very slow grieving process, it just felt so much different compared to the last time I lost someone I knew. Brain fog is complicated. Long COVID is not a very common knowledge point, and explaining it is hella confusing. Trying to explain it to other members of my family, doctors, and especially people at work has become a challenge. It's also so invasive that you are constantly having to explain that the reason something is a certain way is because you have brain fog. I hate using it as an excuse because I'm nervous that eventually my managers will just start blowing it off or think I'm making it up. As a result, I don't really talk about it at work anymore. And since it's not a very visual apparent condition, I wonder if they realize I still even have it. The anxiety of putting up with it and having to explain it to others really compounds into one unified mess. I don't want to dwell on it, but the mental health effects of long COVID have been substantial. Thankfully, while all the answers aren't out there are ways to help cope with it, and that takes me to my next section, where I talk about how I'm fighting long COVID. Realistically, there is not a lot I can do to help combat long COVID right now. That itself is the scariest aspect. It's getting worse and I don't know how to stop or improve it. I don't know if the effects are permanent and if the degradation ever slows. I've been to my doctor several times, and up until very recently, I was never put in the emergency room because of its effects. I'm not going to get into specifics for my own privacy, but ultimately they didn't bring any fruition. They don't want to do any serious tests before ruling out every other possibility, which I mean makes sense, and I'm not here to argue with that. Ultimately, though, the only way I'm going to be able to do that is that I just surrender myself to the hospital for a long period of time. That is something I just don't feel comfortable doing right now, and I'm not in a position of my own life to do. There is one small silver lining of the problem but it's just that, small. Taking certain vitamins has apparently helped people feel better, including my mother. I only recently began taking these, plus one that was prescribed to me after my ER visit. Niacin, iron D2, and D3 are the major ones. I don't know if I can recommend them to anybody else with brain fog because I don't know a whole lot and I'm not a medical professional. As of right now, about a week in, I haven't seen any improvement, but I'll keep updates posted on my Twitter following the upload of this video. All I can hope is that they help to some degree, and a more direct solution is found that will help stop this. And that's the end of the video. Although I made an unscripted video talking about my experience, I hope this does a much better job explaining things in depth. I want to apologize for my small drop of content. It's actually because I've had to move by the end of the month, and I'm wrapping up a very intense college class. I plan on releasing one history video in June, but anything can change at this point, so I'm not guaranteeing it. Worst comes to worst, I just set my schedule back a month. Until next time, guys, stay tuned.